Derek Hahn. 8th grade, I had started a new school, and I didn't know anybody there. And Derek's dad taught calculus. And so a few years later, just to give you an idea of Derek's dad, we walked in one day to pre-calc, and he was up standing at a whiteboard. Now, I know my gray hair, you didn't think I had any teachers that had a whiteboard, but he was the first one in the school to replace his chalkboard. And Mr. Hahn is up there wearing one of those old school pilot caps, goggles, and a scarf. If you remember the old Peanut strip, it was the same that Snoopy wore when he pretended he was fighting the Red Baron. And so he's just writing away at the board, teaching class. And we're sitting there in stunned silence. We can't concentrate on anything except, why is Mr. Hahn wearing this ridiculous outfit? Finally, someone had the gumption. They spoke up and they said, Mr. Hahn, what's with this? And he said, we're flying today, strap in. Total dad joke, okay? But it worked. Going back to Derek. So 8th grade, I don't meet people well. It's a new school, it's attached to the high school, a bunch of older kids. And I was really nervous, but Derek came up to me immediately, started talking with me, made me feel at ease immediately. He's the kind of guy, the friendliest guy I've ever known in my entire life. And he didn't just do it with me, he did it with everybody else at the school. Derek's the kind of guy that if you were in this room right now, half of you would already be friends with him. And the other half would be friends by the end of this presentation. My job today is to teach you how to be like Derek. Not with other people, but with search engines. So we talk about SEO. SEO has a really bad connotation, right? I can see a couple grimaces in the room because there's been so many snake oil salespeople, right? And there's been people that try to make it sound more complicated than it is. But at the end of the day, all SEO is making your site Google friendly. Now, as a quick caveat, you're going to hear me say Google a lot today. And it's not because I hate the other search engines. Bing and Yahoo, just curiosity, any people use Bing or Yahoo? Nobody wants to admit it, right? That's okay. They all work pretty much the same thing. In fact, all the fundamentals I'll talk to you about today are going to work everywhere in the world with the exception of a couple search engines in China and Korea that are a little fundamentally different. So I say Google, I say SEO, we're all talking about the same thing. So, to start off, I just want to kind of understand what I have in terms of the room here. So, show of hands, how many people at this exact moment are breathing? Call the morgue, okay? We got a couple people that are still in a food coma from lunch. Let me try one more time. How many people in this room are breathing right at this exact moment? All right, Lazarus has risen. Thank you very much. Okay, so I'm going to ask you to divide yourself into 3 categories right now. Okay, so from an SEO perspective, would you say that you have beginner knowledge, intermediate knowledge, or advanced knowledge? So show of hands, how many people would say beginner? Okay, great. Intermediate? Okay, awesome. And advanced? Yes, we're going to get along great. Don't steal all my... So, that helps me out a lot. Now, the other thing that I want to do, 2 things I want to talk about. The first is that this is going to be an interactive presentation. It's going to go a lot better if you ask questions. And you don't need to wait till the end to do so. Okay? And when you have questions, chances are somebody else has those same questions. So everybody's going to learn more. So at any time throughout this presentation, do you understand something or you want to ask, raise a hand, throw a shoe at me, whatever. Get my attention and let's go through it. Now, to start off, let's talk about what you're going to learn today. The very first thing is we're going to talk about what matters to Google. Then we're going to talk about specific things like how to choose your keywords and best practices for how do you write press releases, how do you submit press releases on your website or how do you publish them on your website, and how do you enhance earned media from an SEO perspective. And finally, we're going to teach you how to talk to and work with all those weird SEO folks. Now, we'll take a pause for a second. My goal, what I need to deliver to you today, is to let you leave here with information that you can take back on Monday, information that you can use to start doing better work from an SEO perspective and get even more value out of all the great PR work you're already doing. So, I'm going to take a step back. Whether it's a question about this, whether it's a question about SEO, or a project maybe that you're working on right now, types of things that you would like to learn today. Yes, ma'am.
So what are we going to do?
So the question is, what do we need to do on a regular basis to be in the top 10 for a keyword? And by the way, I understand that I have abysmal handwriting. This is actually the best that I can write here. But it's my accountability board to make sure that we address all of the things that you're asking about today. I can probably read most of what I write up there. All right, who else had questions? Yes, sir.
How do you use SEO in relation to social media?
That's great. So SEO, we'll put plus, heart, social media. Okay, I saw some more hands. Yes, ma'am. So I'm so glad you brought that up. That's the one part that we're gonna actually spend a decent amount of time on in terms of basic SEO. Because if you don't get keywords right, and that was your question is, what are the keywords that people are actually using so that I can put that in place? If you don't get the keywords right, you're gonna waste all your time and effort on SEO. So that's the very cornerstone stop, do not pass, go moment. Okay, any other things that people wanna make sure that they learn today? Yes, ma'am.
Break down silos between SEO teams and
Yes. So break down silos between SEO, and I'll just put PR. Okay, so if I'm understanding, the question is, first it goes back to a little bit to your previous question, which is how do I choose the right keywords? But the second part is, you get this information, you pass it off, it goes into the ether, and somebody does something and throws it up on the website, and you don't know whether the quality really is there in terms of what's been done. Okay, great. Any other things people want to make sure we go over today? Yes, sir.
Maybe A/B testing of landing pages.
Yeah. So the question, this is one of my favorite things in the world, is A/B testing with landing pages. And we do it a lot more, especially on the paid advertising side, it's a little bit easier, but it can be done with SEO too. And we'll talk through some of those ways. But it's an awesome, awesome thing to do. And so A/B testing is just, will one version of my page work better than the other version of my page? Other questions? All right, we got a pretty full topic, so thank you all for that, I appreciate it. So, anybody know who this is? Yes, Coach. That old sitcom Cheers, Coach Ernie Pantuzzo. And for those of you that never watched it, Coach was, give me an adjective. Idiot, yes. Coach was dumb, right? He was an old baseball player and coach, and he was proud of his record for how many times he got hit in the head with a baseball. So very dumb guy, asked a lot of dumb questions. Now, Coach unfortunately passed away during the taping, or during the season, a couple seasons in, and was replaced by Woody. If you remember, Woody Harrelson joining the show. Woody was also very stupid, or I should say very naive, and asked a lot of stupid questions, right? So, let's talk about fear for a second. Some people are afraid of spiders, afraid of heights. Some people are afraid of public speaking. What's Google afraid of? Coach. Now, I don't mean that Google's actually afraid of Coach. I don't think that's an existing phobia that's ever been documented for a person, let alone a corporation. But what Google's afraid of is looking dumb. They've built their entire business, the most successful knowledge-based company in the world, on being smart and by delivering results to people that they're looking for. And if they stop delivering those results, the whole house of cards falls down and their business goes away. So they want to look smart, and we're going to talk about what matters. And what matters to me, this is my family, my kids and my wife, right? So that's Emma, Max, and Clarella on their first day of school. As a quick aside, part of the reason I brought up Cheers is we're a little addicted to Cheers. We started watching again, and if you haven't ever watched it, or you have not watched it in a long time, it's on Netflix right now, and it stands up really well. And so my 9-year-old and my 12-year-old love Cheers. And they love it. And by it, I mean they love watching a show about a bar with a lot of adult situations. I didn't say I was a good parent, I just said I cared about my children. So, we're gonna talk about what matters to Google. You start with having a very technically sound website. You want to make sure that it doesn't have errors, for example. How can you fix broken links? How can you make sure that all pages render? What can you do to clean up code on the website? So whether that's extra code that's not needed, whether that's fixing JavaScript, whether that's dealing with issues with ahreflang tags. And then you have to deal with speeding it up. Google's been on a crusade to get sites to load more quickly. And so that's really important to SEO, way more important than it ever has been the last 2 years. So you need to get your site to load as quickly as possible. And then finally, we need to make sure that we're optimizing for mobile. People are using mobile more and more, and especially if you're dealing with an international audience. It's going to be a huge percentage of your traffic. I'm going to give you a scary stat. 48% of people, nearly half of people, if they come to your website on their mobile phone and can't quickly find the information that they're looking for, they will never, never return to your website. By the way, if any of you afterwards says, man, Justin was so awesome, I'd like to get him a present. That's never happened to me, but in case it did, I would like a t-shirt like that. So just saying, I'm throwing it out there, keeping it on the table. So this is good news. Content is really, really important, and that's what each and every one of you excels at, right? It's critical for SEO, so you're in the driver's seat. You're more important to SEO than you ever have been. Now, content's always been important, right? But in the old days, it used to be just about how much content. That still matters, but it matters the quality of the content. Now, people have gamed the system a lot over the years. If anybody remembers like really far back in the old days, one of the things people would do, because Google liked a lot of content, people would actually put content they wanted people to read in black font on a white background, and then they would put content in white font, you remember, white font in white background, so that the web crawlers, the spiders could see it, but the individual people couldn't see it. So what happens? Google makes an adjustment to its algorithm, then people make an adjustment, the scammers make an adjustment, and then Google corrects again, and then the spammers, and it's a dance that continues today. Quick aside, my favorite spammer trick of all time, this was probably back in the late 90s. So meta tags, we haven't talked about yet, but meta tags are information in the background that nobody really sees for the most part. They're just things that web spiders can crawl. And so they used to matter a lot to search engines. Now they only matter a little bit. But when they mattered a lot, people would take porn star names, and they would stuff their meta tags with porn star names. Because I've heard there's porn on the internet. I don't know if that's true or not, but I've heard that. But people are searching for these names a lot. So the theory was, if people are searching for them and I can get them to my website, I'm increasing my traffic. Now, once you get to Joe's Town and Garden website, I'm not sure that they've delivered on the promise that you were looking for, but it apparently drove enough traffic that people used to do that. I digress. So, we're gonna write great content that users care about. We're going to use a lot of necessary words. Don't add words just to add words. I know you're professional writers, you don't do that, but I see that a lot. And with this specifically, I've never been a guy that says you need to have a certain number of words, but to give you some guidelines, some people in my office would say the minimum number of words you want to have on a page is 300. And if you're really trying to get a page to really rank for something significant, you're looking more at 1,500 plus, just to give you some guidelines on what you might be writing about. But again, just write a lot of useful information that people care about, and it goes into more in-depth than your competition does. End of the day, would you read it and would you share what you're writing? So keyword optimization. We have a little bit of a disagreement in my office. So one of the things you heard me mention before is that SEO is all about making your site Google friendly. Now, our head of analysis actually says it's about making your site user-friendly. And he's not wrong, because that's what Google's striving for, is how do you make your site as user-friendly as possible? But at the end of the day, my contention is Google's trying to approximate that, but are they ever really going to get there? They're just delivering up what they think is the best information that people want to see. So you still have to do things for users, but within the confines of what Google deems important. So like we talked about before, and this is really important when we talk about how to rank and how do we choose keywords, you have to select keywords. And you have to designate a particular keyword for a particular page of your site. So for example, you wouldn't say, here's 100 keywords I want to rank for. I want to rank the homepage for all of them. You're going to pick a couple keywords for the homepage. And then you're going to have other pages of your site that you have to build, and you're going to optimize for particular keywords. When we talk about keywords, there's a few factors that you have to look at. First factor is relevancy. So is the keyword relevant to your business? And is it relevant to the page that you're writing about? And is it relevant to the person that's searching that you're trying to reach? And volume. If I wanted to, I could rank my website for greatest SEO presentation at the San Diego Marriott on December 6, 2018. You know, Iron Mike Sharp, pat on the back. Doesn't matter. Nobody's ever searched for that. Nobody's ever going to search for that, right? Doesn't do me any good. So you have to do a search for a keyword that people actually are looking for. But the flip side of that is that you have to look at the competition. So when you're choosing your keywords, there's some tools we'll go through. But one of the quick ways you can look at it is do a search, who's ranking at the top? Forget Wikipedia, they own everything. But what are the other businesses that rank number 1 and number 2 that you would consider competitors of yours? And if they're on a whole nother playing field than you are, you probably need to look at some other keywords that have less volume but are more attainable for you. And finally, the other big factor I'll put is conversions. Now, does anybody notice anything about conversions that's different than the other words up there? It's in blue, right? That's what the Scooby-Doo gang called a clue. And the reason is conversions are the most important thing I'll talk to you about. Now, what's a conversion? A conversion is somebody taking an action on your website that you want them to take. All right, so let's talk about your websites. What are things you would like people to do on your websites? Find a testing location, great. So for example, it could be going to a contact us page or looking at a map or a locator on there. Awesome, great answer. What else? I'm sorry? Create an account, that's a great one, absolutely. Submit information, and then it's yours to do whatever you want with it. All right, what else?
Take a plunge.
Take a plunge?
Plunge.
I was like, take a plunge? I'm like, what kind of website do you have there? I love it. Take a pledge, that's a great one. Other things it might be. I'm sorry? Call a phone number, absolutely. And there's ways you can track that, right? These are all great answers. It can be buying something online if you have an e-commerce site. It can be filling out a form. It can be going to a contact us page. It can be signing up for a newsletter. Whatever matters to you is a conversion. And so eventually you need to track and see what's actually paying off for you, because the traffic that leads to conversions is your most valuable traffic. That's what you want to pay attention to. We want to use them in important places early on. So let's say the title of your page or the subject of your press release, the keyword that you're trying to go after is motorcycle insurance. And you represent Moto Inns. I don't know, it sounds like a motorcycle insurance place, right? So a good title for you to use is Motorcycle Insurance Product Released by Moto Inns Revolutionizes the Industry. I know, it sounds like something somebody would write. That's better because motorcycle insurance is at the beginning of the tag. So that's better than, for example, Moto Inns releases new product to revolutionize the industry in motorcycle insurance. So again, have the keyword sooner within the tag and make sure that you're putting it in important places. Yes, sir. So the question is, why the heck does that matter? So to answer your question, will it be found? Yes, it's going to be found regardless. But they're looking at every little thing that's going to show that it has more importance than something else, than the other words on the page. So when it sees that it's coming up first, you're talking about it, you're giving it prominence on your site, so it's going to take that word more seriously. So both are good. First one was just a little bit better. And don't stuff. I know you guys don't do this. You all don't do this. But keyword stuffing where you just say the same word over and over again doesn't matter anymore. So don't do that. Talk like a normal human being. Use other related words in your text. Google's actually picking that up semantically now. And we'll talk about a couple tools. When you're doing keyword research, the way that you want to start is by taking a pad of paper out and a pen and writing down what are the things that you think people are searching for that you would like your business to show up for. Then you do your research, right? You read literature, read the websites, interview people at the company, but I want to put a giant asterisk on here. because, and I think this came up in one of the questions. With keyword research, with keywords, companies typically have their own jargon. And the way they talk about their products and services are different than the way that their customers talk about their products and services. So my pro tip to you is, if you can, talk with a sales team. Because the sales team is on the front lines talking to consumers every day. And they know the words that people are using. So if you're going to do interviews, put the emphasis on what they'll do. Now, once you've taken that information, then you're going to use a tool. And so one of the tools that I have up here is Google Ads. It used to be called Google AdWords. It's an advertising platform. You can sign up, you can create an account for free. You do have to put a credit card in there, but you never actually, I'm on tape saying this, and my reps will get mad. You never actually have to pay any money to Google, okay? So you don't have to start a campaign, but you do have to put a credit card just to open up the account. Now, once you've done that, they have a tool in there called their Keyword Planner. And their Keyword Planner will give you information about ideas for keywords, geographically based. They'll give you volume, how often people are searching for, and they'll give you an idea of how competitive those particular keywords are. So that's one model. Now, the other two that I have listed up here, SEMrush and Keyword Keg, we're actually going to use an experiment with today here in an exercise. But SEMrush and Keyword Keg are both on the freemium model. So there's certain things that you can do for free, and then if you like it and it's a part of your business that you want to use, you can upgrade and pay money for them. Any questions on keywords, use, optimization, selection, anything along those lines? Yes, ma'am. So the question is, how do you deal with getting pressure from above that you need to talk about your products in a certain way that people will talk about, but yet you've spent a lot of money on trademarking terms or just talking about terms in a certain way? I think you have to straddle the line as much as you can on that and do both. So one consideration I would look at first is sometimes companies we know will do what I'd call SEO in advance. So it's a keyword that doesn't rank right now, people aren't searching for it, but they're betting the farm that people are going to search for it in the future. So it's kind of protecting your turf a little bit to rank for that. I'm totally on board. But in other cases, if it is a trademark term, I think it's important to do that in some respect, because what you don't want is then a competitor doing that and showing up above you. But it's the terms that I'm more concerned with that are what I call ego keywords. The CEO says, we got to rank for this word. Mr. or Mrs. Smith, I can show you nobody searches for that word. No, we got to do it. I search for this word all the time. Great, nobody else does. Sometimes you just have to say, okay, I'll do that, but can I optimize for some other keywords at the same time? And I think that's your best bet. The part that'll get tricky with that is if you have them being really micromanagey and saying, oh, why isn't this keyword up higher than this one? And then it's, I think, more of a political thing. We're talking about how do we have a great user experience. And this is more important than it ever has been in the history. We're spending a lot more of our time and a lot more of our efforts going through a user experience, more than we have in a long time. Let's talk about ways that you can make your site have a better user experience. And the first thing, and this is one that I'm a real stickler on, is making your site easy to read. Now, you have web designers, and they're creative people, and they design sites every day, and pages every day, and they get bored. So they want to start doing different things, okay? Fight them on this. It's really critical. White background, dark font. Large enough that you can read. Really, really, really put your foot down. So reverse font, small font. The one I hate the most, reverse font's pretty bad, but the one I hate the most is white background and light gray font. I'm like, you have a giant monitor that you're this close to and staring, you can read it, nobody else can read it. Easy to navigate. Make sure that people can find the information they're looking for, and just as important, make sure they can find the information you want them to find. Whether we're talking about the navigation or we're talking links within the page themselves. Fast loading. Your goal is to be Lightning McQueen, eat speed for breakfast. Has to be quick, otherwise people are going to bounce. Optimize for mobile. We talked about this a little bit already, but I want to bring it up again. Now, I'd like everybody to take out their phones. A couple of you already have them out, I know, because you're taking notes, you're so engrossed in what I'm saying, nobody's been checking email. But take out your phones right now. And I want you to go look at your company or your client's company's website. I'm going to give you a minute to do this. Browse around, look at it, read it. Now, I'm not going to embarrass anybody, but I'm going to ask you to silently ask yourselves, if you didn't know your company and you were a prospect for it, would you bother with this website and contact to learn more? And if you're nodding your head up and down, congratulations. If you're not, think about it. Now, let me take a step back. I saw a body language expert one time. And as you know, guys are dumb. And women communicate on a level guys can't understand. So when a guy nods his head up and down, it means he's agreeing with everything you're saying. When a woman nods her head up and down, it means, who knows? It can mean anything. All right. Now, I'm big on this. You already heard me talk about conversions. How do you make conversions easy on your website? We'll talk about a phrase, sometimes you hear conversion rate optimization. All it means is how do you get more people to take the action you want? And there's giant formulas that people use to determine this from a scientific standpoint, but it comes down to two factors. So the first factor is, how do you increase incentive? How can you make it so that people want to do what you're doing? Now, example, if you say that if I fill out a form, you're going to send me a Brinks truck loaded with gold bars to my house, and I believe you, I'll give you whatever you want. I'll give you my social security number. I'll ship one of my kids off to you, and I love my kids. But most of us are not offering a Brinks truck full of gold bars. So we have to look at how do we decrease friction? And friction is anything that's going to keep a person from wanting to take the action that you want them to take. Make them jump through hoops, go through a bunch of pages on your website, ask for a bunch of information. My biggest pet peeve, and I've been on a soapbox for this for 12 years now, is asking for too much information on forms. And I say, why do you need that, client? The client says, well, we need it because the sales department needs that information. I said, really? Couldn't the sales department look up that information? All you really need is the name and the contact number and the email address. You don't really need anything else, right? Sometimes companies are trying to make the user make their lives easier. But your job is to make their lives easier and give you information. Yes, sir. Great question. There's a couple embedded questions in there that I'd like to explore because I think there's going to be other people in the audience having similar issues. So the setup as you provided me is you're a large organization, you have multiple websites, and we need to talk about that separately, but then I'll answer your question directly. So the question is, well, what if you have to send somebody to a separate website to complete an action as opposed to doing it there? Every time you make somebody click, you're going to lose. You're going to lose a percentage. So I would say, do you really need to do that, or does it just make your life easier? Not yours, you're a great guy, but your company's life easier to send people through to that. And I would challenge that as hard as I could. But by show of hands, how many companies or clients that you're representing, how many companies have multiple domains, multiple websites that they launch? There are reasons to have multiple websites. It might be a separate entity, or it might be something that you're doing a splash promotion for, or something along those lines. What I'll just say quickly is that a rising tide lifts all oars. So from a purely SEO perspective, the more value you can put into one website, the better. So again, you might have other business reasons, but from an SEO perspective, try to build up the value in that one domain that's most important as much as you can, rather than trying to optimize multiple sites. Again, it's not cookie cutter for everybody, and I'm happy to talk about individual situations, but try to optimize one site whenever you can. Great question. Other questions on, I had one other thing. So, quiz time. You ask for forms, like a person's name, their email address, their contact information. There is one piece of information you can ask for on a form, like a contact us form. One piece of information you can ask for that actually will increase your conversion rate. Normally, the more fields you ask for, the conversion rate goes down. But there's one field that increases your conversion rate, makes people more likely to fill out the form. Any guesses on what that is?
Would you like to be entered into a giveaway or a contest?
contest?
Yeah, so you're talking about incentive. That's a good one. Normally that's a checkbox. Not what I'm thinking though. Good guess. What else? Would you like someone to contact you? That you're psychologically getting close to what I'm looking for. Yeah, now we're talking. So the one piece of information I would ask you to put all on your forms is a questions box. Questions. Call it comments, call it questions, call it whatever you want. One of those boxes where they can actually type information in. I've never seen a study that says why it works, but my armchair psychologist says people believe they're more likely to get their question answered if they have the ability to actually type something in. I would encourage you, if you can, to make it so they can actually submit information directly through the form. And I think you're more likely to get a response in that case. And the other reason is it's better for you to track conversions and what's working. Because ultimately, you're going to have people that are clicking on that, and you can track that as an event in analytics, but there's no way for you to track whether they actually sent the email. So you're going to be inflating the amount of submissions and thinking things are working better than they actually are. So when you can actually, it's okay to have emails for certain things, but the main key pages, I would have somebody be able to fill out the information. Oh, and yes. That's an awesome best practice. But the question was, should we be doing an autoresponder that says, we have your information, we're going to reach out to you shortly so that you don't want to kill somebody? Yes, you should absolutely do that. Because what you're going to find out from a lead perspective is if people aren't contacted, whether autoresponder or otherwise, and the numbers keep shrinking. I've seen it within 4 minutes now. If they're not getting contacted immediately, they're going on to the next place and you're going to lose the business in a lot of cases. That's a really great best practice. The other tip I'd give everybody is, we'll do another show of hands quiz. So, given the choice of, you're shopping for something for the holidays, and you have a question. Given the choice between picking up the phone and calling someone, emailing / filling out a form, we'll combine those into one category, or live chatting somebody. Those are your three choices. So, what is your number one preference? How many people would prefer to get on the phone and talk with somebody? Okay. How many people would prefer to fill out a form or send an email? Wow, no, one. Brave soul, I appreciate it. And how many people would prefer to get on live chat? If you're not using live chat, use live chat. Look around the room, look at how many people are doing it. It's so inexpensive to use. Because ultimately, all you're trying to do is make it easy for somebody to communicate with you in a way that they're comfortable communicating. I'm sorry? Great question. There are logistics of, do you have somebody on the other end that can answer it? I will tell you, I have a couple of people that can answer live chats on our website, but you can hook it up to your phone. So I actually will get things on holidays, in the middle of the night. Occasionally I'll be driven crazy by a 2 a.m. waking me up in the middle of the night, buzz on my phone. But I get those things so that I can answer because I don't want to miss the opportunity. Now, I would recommend that you probably block some countries from being able to do that so you can filter out some spam. But they make it so easy for you to be able to respond that you don't need a staff of people to do it. And you can also put a button up there that says no one's available right now, and it'll send them an email and then said somebody will get back to you because you're normally collecting their email address and name when they open that up. Great questions. Other questions on this? All right. Everything we've talked about so far is something that you have 100% control over. That makes Google uneasy. How do they know you're not just scamming them? So they're going to look for ways that they can verify what you're talking about as good information. So third parties, independent parties that can verify you. The big way is backlinks. Okay? And so backlinks are those links on other websites somebody can click on, they come back to your website. I will tell you that in every study up until this year, backlinks are the number one correlated factor with having SEO success. So we talk about how do we get our keywords to rank. We're talking about all the things I just talked about, plus having keywords, or plus having backlinks. This is the first year, and I've been doing this with this agency for 12 years. I've been doing this since 2001. This is the first year that we are de-emphasizing the importance of backlinks, okay? Google's changed its algorithm a little bit. They're still necessary, and they're still extremely important. We're still doing it for our clients, but we're just putting a little less emphasis on that, and we're putting a little more emphasis on quality content and usability. So that's where we're trading off, but they're still important. When we talk about backlinks, It matters the total number of links that you have, but it also matters the number of separate websites that link back to you. So to give you one extreme example, let's say you had 10,000 links. For your industry, that might be really good. But those 10,000 links are coming from 10 sites. All other things being equal, you could have half the number of links, 5,000 links, but they're coming from 2,000 domains, you're crushing it. That's way better than the first scenario. So you want to have a good number, but also from a lot of different websites. The quality of the websites matter. Having that link from an article that you got placed or an interview you scored in a great publication is going to have way more value than some spammy blog that just popped up. Information being relevant. So the more that site, the more that page talks about information related to what you're talking about, the better. Having old links and new links are both good. Old establishes you've been around a while and have had authority. New says that you're still relevant. And then finally, we'll talk about linking to interior pages. So the easiest link to get is a link back to your homepage. The more you can get links to other pages within your site, sometimes that's called deep linking, the better. So I'd really encourage you, if you're getting a little more advanced, to get interior links. Majestic will give you not a full amount of information, but it gives you some on a free basis. They're a freemium as well. SEMrush will do the same thing. And then the other one I would definitely encourage people to look for or to have is Google Search Console. It used to be called Google Webmaster Tools. That's free. And Google will give you information about links. It's actually probably, from my perspective, less good than those tools I mentioned, but it's a free thing and it's from Google. So you know the links actually exist. The other thing we'll look at is mentions. So when your CEO has that article that was published about her and she has that quote in the New York Times, there's no link. That's okay. That's still great for you for SEO. You had a link, that'd be the cherry on top. But that's still a really good thing for you. And then finally, we'll talk about social media. So officially, Google has disavowed that social media has any impact on SEO whatsoever. A lot of SEOs don't buy it. Now, when you look at ranking factors, what determines whether a site's ranking or not, social media comes up very high. Social media usage, points back, mentions, links, things like that. Now, Google would argue that correlation is not causation, and that may very well be true. But the bottom line is, if you're creating buzz, you're doing this great job to get your stories told, and those stories can be mentioned on social media, I truly believe, regardless of what Google says, that that's going to help you out from an SEO perspective as well. So we can, and then let's actually take a break and talk about this for a second. Somebody had a question about, I think, Facebook or social media, SEO and loving social media. I'm sorry, who had that question early? Yes, sir, and would you repeat your question? With SEO, and I'm sorry to repeat the question, it was about how do you get the interrelationship between SEO and social media. With SEO and paid search and anything with search engines, the value is intent. You're reaching a person that's actively looking for something that you're selling, but you don't know who that person is. The value of social media is you're reaching people with a very specific demographic and a very specific set of interests and likes. So if we're talking about Facebook, for example, anybody want to guess the average number of data points that Facebook has on every US user? I'll take shout outs. 90? Anybody else? 1,500. I wish I had that on camera. 1,500. And so that's why all this stuff came up, right? And Facebook's getting hammered. So they've actually pulled back from an advertising perspective a little bit on what you can target, but there's still a ton that you can target on there. So Facebook for a while was especially trying to give people more information, but their search sucks, right? You've all used their search bar. And Google was moving more towards providing social information, and they'll include tweets in the results and things like that. I think they're going to continue to move together, and I think they influence each other, but I see them as two wholly distinct tactics that you would work. Does that sort of answer your question a little bit? 10%? Thank you. I appreciate your pity on me. Yes? Yeah, questions about Open Graph Protocol and information you can share specifically for social media, and does that help you for SEO? So Open Graph is information you can put in the back end of the website that nobody sees, but it helps Facebook and other places pick up information about what you're doing. I would say that As a best practice, I would use Open Graph Protocol. How much of a factor it has, I'm not sure. If I were looking at something and we want to get in the weeds on it, that I would really very strongly recommend, it would be schema markup. So there's schema, without diving too far in the weeds, is information that you can share with about the site. So you can tell what hours you're open. You can talk about who the authors are on your website. There's a lot of different things that you can mark up on your website.
Basically what Google's knowledge graph uses.
Yeah, exactly. So the schema markup, and I'm happy to go into more detail probably during a break, but I would say I would place a greater emphasis on that than I would Open Graph Protocol. Question, absolutely. So we're done now with kind of the basics of SEO. Any other questions on this? Or we're going to dive into the PR world of things. When we're writing a press release, we're starting here. We want to make sure that we're using keywords in the headline, in your lead, and subheadings. So if you're not using subheadlines, I would encourage you to do so, and I encourage you to use the keywords in there when you can. And also make sure you're including links. You want to have links that lead deeply into your website. And you want to make sure that you're not using keyword-rich anchor text. Let me take a step back and explain what that means, because I know it was gobbledygook. So anchor text, those are the actual words that you can click on to be taken to a website. So typically the blue underline stuff, right? Several years ago, people said, I have control over press releases. So I'm going to submit press releases because the prices came down, there were other news wires. I'm going to put links in there that just have my keywords underlined because Google looks at anchor text. And that's going to help my SEO, and it did for a while. But too many people were abusing it, so Google reversed it. So if you're trying to rank for motorcycle insurance like we talked about before, don't have motorcycle insurance as the keywords that are underlined in your press release anymore. Just have whatever words make sense, have that linked back to your website. And you don't have to say click here or anything like that, but just naturally whatever you've written. Does that make sense? All right, so let's talk about publishing press releases on your website. Scooby-Doo, first is in blue. This is your Monopoly stop, do not pass, go moment. When you're writing press releases, post them to your website first before they are sent out to the news wires. And it doesn't have to be days ahead of time. It can be 1 hour, but have it posted first. What we want to make sure is that Google recognizes your site as being the one that wrote it first, because they're going to give you credit for it. So for example, if it's set to go to the newswires midnight Pacific time, have it go midnight Mountain time. Use a good URL. The URL, again, what the person types in. What happens typically, when you talk about, you just write something and you send it off to the web production team and it goes off in the ether. What typically happens is that URL is just whatever the press release title is, right? With a bunch of dashes in between. Let's write a good URL that's based around the keywords, either the keywords only or the keywords with other information. A couple other tips with this. Don't use stop words. Stop words are things like and, or, of, in, the. Remove those from your URL string. Don't use those.
What are those called?
Stop words. And then the closer that the fewer directories, which are the slashes, right? Everything after a slash is a directory. The fewer slashes, bless you, that you have, the better. So a good URL is something like yourcompany.com/infectious-armadillo-diseases. You can laugh, but you know there's some poor grad student out there writing a thesis on it right now. A bad URL is yourcompany.com/about-us/2017/05/infectious-armadillo/diseases. So if you can get it closer with fewer directories, that's a better URL. This one's pretty basic, but make sure on your outer press release page, you publish all your press releases in descending order with the newest up top. I shouldn't have to say that, but I still see it. And write a strong meta title tag and meta description. So title tag we kind of talked about, and it's going to be similar to how you write your subjects. With meta description is not seen by people. Meta description is seen most commonly, anybody know? In the search results themselves. So there's the link that somebody can click on, the meta description is written underneath. So when you're writing your meta description, I don't care about the keyword being in there. I care about you writing it from a sales perspective. Write it to entice people that even if you're ranking below somebody else, that they would rather click on your link than on the link that's above you. Use relevant tags. So I'm happy to dive in, but when you hear things like H1 tags, H2 tags, which are basically your headlines and your subheadlines, you hear things like alt tags, which are basically giving titles, giving information about your pictures. Make sure you're using all of those tags on your site. And now this is different than what I told you before. I do want you to use keyword-rich anchor text on links, on press releases on your website. Do this, even if it means rewriting your press release slightly for the website, go ahead and do that. Because on your site, you can use as much keyword linking as you want. Okay, I'm going to give an example, and then we're going into a group exercise. Any questions about this?
I have a question.
Yes.
How important
So the question is, how helpful is it to have a photo on the press release on your website? From my perspective, it's another way to optimize, another piece that you can optimize, another way that you can rank. I'd love to have a photo on there. I'd love to have a video embedded on there. I'd love to have anything that I can on there. So I'm a big proponent of it. And use the appropriate alt tag when you do. So I'm going to show you a quick exercise. I know that's hard to read. So this is from a client of ours. We took a press release from 2014 that I'm pretty sure had never seen the light of day. Certainly not in the last 4 years. It didn't rank for anything. We took the tips I just talked about, and we got it to rank for a term related to the Gartner's Magic Quadrant. Now, in all fairness, it's not the most searched term of all time, but it was very important to the client, and this was not doing anything for them whatsoever. One other thing we did, I didn't mention, this is another tip. We added a link to the SEC's website on this particular press release. That's a highly trusted website. So when you are linking out to a website that's highly trusted, that actually can help your SEO. SEC being the financial government organization, that was helpful. But within weeks, we had this page ranking for this particular term and sending traffic to the website. So all the things that I just talked about, and thank you for bearing with me as we went through it, are things that if you would go back through your archives on your press releases, you'd be amazed at how much traffic you could generate just by optimizing those. It's a little tedious, it takes keyword research, but it can really empower you. Exercise time. All right, you all have your books out, that's awesome. So for time's sake, let's stay at our table. And I want you to flip back past the presentation and go to, you should see this page, press release optimization exercise, and flip to the back of that. And you should see Hero of the Underground. Fender celebrates 60 years of Jazzmaster innovation. And I'm going to give you all a couple minutes, and just please read that. All right, so hopefully you got through most of that, if not everything. And I'd like you at your tables now. Flip back to the front of the page. And I would like you to discuss as a group what are 5 keyword phrases that you would consider for this particular press release. Let's start going through this now. And what I'm going to ask everybody to do, I'm going to ask you some questions, but on your phones or your computers first, please right now, it says Majestic on here, go to keywordkeg.com. So keg, like a keg of beer, keyword keg, powder keg, I don't know, keywordkeg.com. It's a really slow loading site. And while you're on there, there'll be a big red button at the top. There'll be a keyword box, and within that keyword box, there'll be keyword as a sample word. X out of that. This is going to take a little bit of time to load. It's slow loading because it's the free version. So I'm just going to do that now. Now, while you're doing that, I'd like to hear from people. So who would like to volunteer one of the keywords they wrote down? Yes? Jazzmaster. It's a great term. Now, I heard at least at this table and maybe some of the other ones, were people having questions about whether you should use brand terms or not? That's a great question, right? It was a great discussion I heard from multiple people. So what I would say first is you always want to rank on your branded terms because you don't want somebody else to do it. And then the question is, should there be something else? So why did you choose Jazzmaster for that? Yeah, it's the name of the product. It's very specific. That's great. So whether you'd say Jazzmaster or maybe sometimes go a little deeper with that, but Jazzmaster is a great term. Yes, who else? Yes, sir. I'm sorry, alternative music. Yes. That's really interesting. Why did you choose alternative music? So it's a really great thought process where you're saying it's unique enough that it's going to narrow down, but still broad enough to have. That's a great thought. What I would say in general is that's a great modifier term. That's still going to have a large search volume when you can combine that something with like, alternative music, alternative rock, alternative music, best guitar for alternative music. Now you're really cooking on something. But I love the thought process is great, and I wouldn't have expected to hear something. Great work. Other things that people wrote. Yes, sir. I'm sorry, modifiable electric guitar. I don't even know what that means, but that sounds so specific. I love it. Why did you choose it? So it's something that you would type yourself, something specific that you would be looking for. That's great. Let's take one more. Another one? Yes, sir? Surf guitar. What is a surf guitar?
I don't know. It sounds interesting.
Awesome. What was it referenced in here?
It was.
I didn't actually read the thing. Come on. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's great. It's a guitar specifically for that type of music. I love it. Okay, so take the 5 keywords that you wrote or that your table wrote, and I want you to put those into Keyword Keg right now. Hit enter, and then you're going to start to get information. It's going to give you suggestions of other keywords. It's going to give you keyword volume. Now, once you've done that, another group discussion, I would like you all to choose one particular keyword. And it can be one from your original list. It can be one that's new based on the suggestions you get from Keyword Keg. This is the freemium version. It's not going to give you everything, but it'll give you some information. And I'll give you about a minute for that. Hannah, you asked a really interesting question when you were talking with the group. What did you ask?
Metric should we go at? What's most important?
Okay, so which metric should we look at? And you mentioned a couple.
Value, volume.
Yeah, so value, comp volume, so you're looking at what's the competition, does that matter, is it more about the volume? And they all matter, and at the end of the day, what I'll tell you, keyword research today is more art than science. So I don't have a perfect answer to give you. I would say you're gonna look at all those factors and determine. If your site, for example, your Fender, you can probably rank for dang near anything that you want that's related to guitars. So you can go after a higher volume, higher competition keyword, but it also might mean you just have some looky-loos that aren't as likely to convert. So that's okay for some pages, but you'd want to have other pages that are a little more specific, like surf guitars and things like that. So that's a great question. So somebody give me an example of a keyword they decided on.
Limited edition Fender.
Limited edition Fender. And Bonnie, why did you choose this?
Cool Fender guitars.
Yeah, great point. So what you're doing is you're going down the middle of the road, something that has some volume but not crazy, some competition but not crazy, but also we think is going to have some conversion value for us. I love it. Okay, so I'm going to keep this shorter, but I'd like everybody to take 3 or 4 minutes, and let's look at the bottom part now. I'd like you to do is, based on everything we've talked about so far, what would you do, a couple things, what would you do to optimize this press release? And whether you want to write the answers here, you want to write directly on the back of the back of the page with the press release, doesn't matter. Whatever you would like to do. So let's wrap it up. And there's a lot of things that people could do, and I really enjoyed listening to many of the comments. Some people were just indignant, let's axe this. Other people are like, well, maybe we could do this. So who would like to volunteer one of the things that they would suggest? They looked at it. Yes, sir.
Actually mentioning the word guitar before the paragraph.
Amazing, right? I love it. Great suggestion. The suggestion was, hey, maybe guys, we sell guitars. Let's talk about it before the second paragraph. Okay, what else? And that, by the way, that's a perfect example of they're in that industry. They're not even thinking about it, right? But you are like, duh, come on. I love it. What else? Another suggestion. Yes? Yeah, so put the unique information up top, which I think probably helps from a PR perspective, but also helps by getting some of those unique keywords up at the top as opposed to the company. I love it. Yes, sir? So hyperlink, because this is a super long, the question is, let's move the hyperlink and information up top, people get more information. And I think it's a good one in this case, especially because the press release is so long. And again, I cut this one down. So what is a way that if a person's not going to read the entire thing, can they get there? And you're drawing some value from that. Great suggestion. I wouldn't have thought of that. One more suggestion? Yes?
Really good keyword.
That's a great question. So another one where let's move some information up. They kind of buried the lead, but also getting the keywords up in there. By the way, for all you PR pros, I wanted to find something. I did a keyword research on like great sample PRs. So you all can tear it apart, whatever, but this was listed on a great sample PR website. All right, so let's get back into it. We just have 2 more slides we're gonna go through. And the best is we're gonna talk about earned media. The first is, I'm gonna give you 2 different scenarios. And so this is when you've earned an article somewhere, and then you want to put information on your website. How can you enhance this, right? So in the first scenario, we're talking about if an article links to you, you actually have that link back to your website. If that's the case, do not, I'm stomping my feet now, link back to that article. Because what happens is you got this great value of this link coming to your website. And if you link back, in my industry, that's called a reciprocal link, you're diluting the value of that link that you're getting. So please, if you earned that link, pat yourself on the back, do not link back. If the article does not link to you, you have 2 options, and you want to put information on your website. This first option is the superior option. Write a custom blog post, and with that blog post, just include a couple snippets from the article and include other information that's relevant, why your company's awesome, maybe links to the other products, other information that's going to make it enjoyable for the person to read and really expand that blog post out a little bit. And if you do this, go ahead and it's okay to link out to the original article because they haven't linked to you. And again, if that article is from a high-value website, you're going to get a little bit of an SEO boost from linking out to that article. So this is now a unique piece of content to Google, and you can rank for this. You can draw traffic from this. Yes, ma'am. Great question. So the question was, is it okay to link to an article that links to you from a social media account? Yes, absolutely. So promote it all you want in your email newsletter, promote it all you want in your, on Slack internally, promote it all you want on social media. All of those things are great. Absolutely not gonna hurt you in one bit. Great question. Now, your other option, which it's not my favorite, but you get some value out of this, is you could publish the article as it is in your news section. A lot of places do this. But if you do this, I'm going to suggest 2 things. Number 1, post it a day later, because what we want, again, is that original article to get the value in this case. So we don't want them thinking that you're the originator of the article. And I've tried not to use a lot of Google or SEO jargon, but I'm going to use one now. Ask your developer to put a canonical tag on the site, and that canonical tag will tell the search engines what the original source of information was. But if you don't do both of those things, that's okay, but if you do both, it's the safest way. You're not gonna get a lot of SEO value out of this, but you do get some value of people seeing this information when they come to your site as a sign of credibility. Any questions about, yes? So the question is about duplicate content, and would you get penalized from Google from not using it? No, you wouldn't. It's a great question. Duplicate content is a bad thing. People use that to put more information on their website. And if you do it a lot, it can hurt you. It can actually hurt your rankings. In this case, we're talking about one. It's not going to hurt you. It happens a lot. But just best practice to be safe, let's go ahead and put the canonical tag on there. And especially if you haven't published it, like you knew about it under embargo, and then you posted at the same time, if you haven't done that and you've waited, Google's going to pick them up naturally as the first one anyway. Good question. Yes? Yes!
Okay.
Yes! So the question was, can you reach out to the article, to the original publications and ask for a backlink? Yes, please do that. Great earrings, by the way. Yes, you absolutely want to do that. Always, that's where you get the most value. Other questions on this? Yes? Correct. Yeah, so when I say a link, I mean that there's actual links somebody can click on. I will call a mention when they talk about you, but not linked to you. So in the first scenario, I'm talking about they have a direct link. In the second scenario, for either of those options, they've mentioned you, but haven't given you a link. Cool. Yes? So the question is, he's just scored an awesome win for his CEO. New York Times article, quote, and she's like, dude, this is awesome. I want this on the website now. It's okay. I mean, I'd like a day, but if you want to put it up there and it's still a couple hours later, that's great. And if not, even if you're putting up like immediately, if you have that canonical tag, that'll serve the same function. So that's okay. I would just say use canonical tag in that case. Yes. So the question is, does it dilute the value of the link from the New York Times if you're linking to another page on the New York Times, such as the author's bio page or NewYorkTimes.com? Not as much, but I still wouldn't do it. I would rather, if in that case, if you would link to the author's bio on their own personal website, so it's a separate domain. So it won't hurt you, but New York Times is a killer link. I would rather make sure you get all value from that. Okay. Now, let's move on to the last slide, and we'll talk about how to talk to geeks, SEO people, okay? When I talked to my team, I said, what do you want? When you're breaking down these barriers, breaking down the silos between the SEO team and the PR team, what is the most important thing to you? And all of them said, an open line of communication. Talk with each other. What you have to do is make sure they're aligned, because if they both understand that you can help each other out, bless you, SEO is going to help PR, PR is going to help SEO. It's like chocolate and peanut butter, magic combination. Align your interests politically on this. Now, we gave you tools specifically to do keyword research. What I would suggest to you is share the topic focus before you've written the press release with the SEO team and let them do the keyword research. And the reason I say that is, number one, it saves you time, and they do it all the time. But number two, you might choose a keyword that another page on your site is ranking for already. Now you have 2 pages that you're telling Google, this page is about this keyword. Google gets confused. So in order not to confuse Google, because that can hurt your rankings and can hurt your SEO, let's make sure we have distinct pages for those core value keywords. So keep the SEO team clued in on this. Now, once you've done the press release, have them review it ahead of time. They can make suggestions on keyword edits that you may or may not accept, but you can at least consider them. But the other thing they can do is they can make suggestions on those links. What would they like linked into which pages on your website? And then finally, please send them media placement. So to Hannah's question earlier, whether you do it or whether the SEO team does it, you do want to reach out to those places to see if you can get a link. Even if you can't get a link, or even if you already got a link, it's good for the SEO team to have that information, because then they can take it and use it in other ways as part of their broader content marketing strategy. Does that make sense? Any questions on this? Yes, sir. So the question is, what if I don't have an SEO team? And some people would say, call an SEO person that can help you. I'm not saying that, but other people might say that. But if you don't have, then you're a one-man show and you're doing everything on your own. It's take the information we talked about today and educate yourself as much as you can and put it into practice. But if you do have those separate teams or separate people with functions, leverage them as much as you can. I'm sorry, did I see another hand? How can you get a link from a website to a more relevant page of your website? So I'll tell you a quick story, very brief. So the other day, I was jonesing for a blizzard big time, right? This was right before Thanksgiving. And I was waiting for that pumpkin pie blizzard. And I went there 2 days before Thanksgiving. And do you know what happened? They stopped selling the pumpkin pie blizzard before Thanksgiving. And I said, this is America. What are you doing to me? And she said, I don't know. It's earlier than last year. They got rid of it last year too. It's been like a whole month we haven't had it. And I really talked with this woman because I knew that she had a direct line to corporate to change this injustice. But you know what I did? I got a Reese's Outrageous blizzard with no caramel in it. That was pretty dang good too. Wasn't what I wanted, but it was pretty good. So yes, I would love to have that link back to an interior page that's more relevant, but I'm not gonna get greedy. If I get a link to my homepage, I'm gonna take it. So we are out of time. Thank you, everybody.